Welcome to the We Win Injury Law podcast, everybody. I'm Tyler Todd, your host, sitting here with Jaron, the Snow Canyon Man, Sandberg. Well, technically, good morning. Let's not go good afternoon yet.
Yeah. Wait 20 minutes.
Let's wait.
Then you want a good afternoon me.
Yeah. Let's see what you say. Welcome back, everybody. We're talking about, it's a heavy week. It's a heavy week. And we wanted to podcast this as soon as possible. And not too soon. We spoke about this. We have a radio show that we talked about the topics for today, the morning of September 11th. And so we're going to talk about the Charlie Kirk assassination. We're going to talk about political violence. We're going to talk about violence in America. We're going to talk about how that affects what we do on a daily basis with injury law and some legal perspectives about all those things. But that morning that we talked about the Charlie Kirk assassination, the morning after September 11th, was kind of a heavy morning. Yeah. It was a heavy day. One, because everyone was still in shock with what happened the day before at Utah Valley University, but also obviously just the day of September 11th and what that represents. And so it's been like a week of just conversation. It's a week today.
Yeah.
Since the Charlie Kirk assassination. And then it's just been an interesting week with the conversation, not only like globally, nationally, domestically, regionally here in Utah, but also in our own homes, right? I don't know, your kids are a little younger.
Yeah.
And so maybe you guys have talked about...
Well, and I wasn't planning on really bringing it up with them because I do have young kids, but the whole neighborhood they came home like, hey, Dad, turn on the news. Everyone's watching this.
Everyone's talking about it.
And so even my younger kids had seen maybe more than I wanted them to see at neighbors' houses, and people were just talking about it. So it kind of was something, you almost had to address.
The ages of your children are what, 4 to 9, 4 to 10, 4 to 12?
4 to 12.
4 to 12, 4 to 12.
But obviously my 4 and 7-year-old didn't do a whole lot, but my 10-year-old and 12-year-old, we had a pretty good discussion about it.
Time flies fast. Yeah, 10 to 12. That's right.
Yeah. I'm the older girl.
But mine are teenagers.
Yeah.
So a freshman in high school and a senior in high school. And then, of course, I have a daughter who's a political science major at Utah State.
Yeah.
And so, it's been pure discussion regarding, obviously, the assassination, what it means or what it's not what it means, but what we've talked about in regards to being Utah, right? Governor Cox came out and said a lot of interesting things about not wanting the alleged shooter to be from Utah. That's been perceived in many different ways. And I think I think a lot of people say that initially because, it can't be from our community.
Yeah.
And I can see all the different angles of how that comment was perceived. And then there's been a lot of discussions. And of course, like you said, it's something that you don't want your children to see.
Yeah.
But they have. In fact, my boys, my freshman and my senior saw it before I did.
Yeah. Well, you were in a deposition and I was in a deposition in the other room, and we have an office that's maybe, a mile, 3/4 of a mile up the road.
Just up the road.
Where this occurred. And so, I sent a text to you just saying, hey, this is close to the office. I don't know if you've seen this. And you'd already seen it as well, because I think your kids were already texting you. And it was just kind of I think we always talk about, and you brought this up on the radio show last week, that, if you were in the 1940s and you were alive, you remember Pearl Harbor is kind of that day you'll never forget. And I'm sure there's different days for every generation. And ours, I feel like mine, at least as a teenager, the most impactful one was obviously 9/11 was something. But I think for a lot of Utahns, and especially that college age, like your daughter, this will probably be one of those days that is maybe hard to forget, especially with how graphic it was. And
well, yeah. And if we were talking about it on our radio show, September 11th.
Yeah.
And what I was trying to tell my daughter was, this is a day that, you may remember for the rest of your life, and maybe the world will, who knows?
Yeah.
But I was trying to help her understand the day we all felt on September 11th, or the way that we felt on that day. And if you remember September 11th, just like there might be people that still remember the bombing of Pearl Harbor, right? Yeah. They're older now.
Yeah.
they're still around. Remember that. But September 11th was a heavy day, where we were all glued to the TV all day. And if you were in a bigger city, you got sent home because there was fear about, no one knew where the next plane was going to hit.
Well, even here in Utah, we're quite a ways away from it. Canceled school.
Right.
Sent kids home, and
so it was a heavy day. And I think to kind of help her understand maybe a little bit about what happened that day, Charlie, just the day after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, was a heavy day. Not only was it September 11th, but it was also like that just happened in our country. And I think it's important to note, because we want to talk about a little bit about not just Charlie Kirk, but then there was the assassination of the Minnesota senator.
Yeah, Senate in their house.
And that was just what, June?
Yeah.
That hasn't gotten nearly the media attention nor the discussion that it should have.
Yeah, former Speaker of the Minnesota House, a Democrat, and her husband, Mark Hortman, fatally shot in their home.
By an individual who had like a target list.
Yeah.
Who represented to be like a police officer. Yeah. Showed up in a uniform with a police SUV, or at least what looked to be a police SUV.
Yeah, it's like almost like the plot line of a movie.
Totally.
You think of these things even my wife with the Charlie Kirk shooting, you think of these in terms of like, well, I've seen graphic movies, but you just don't expect this like in real life. And, with the political nature and kind of just this Vance Luther Bolter 57. I mean, he's who they, took a manhunt to track him down, but you just don't expect that.
And 70 political targets on his list, apparently. 70.
Yeah.
So now he was arrested. He pled not guilty. And that's exactly what Tyler Robinson has done. Yesterday? I think he had his first appearance yesterday. He pled not guilty. And my wife's like, wait, why would he what's going on? And I'm like, that's normal.
Yeah. I heard the same thing from a neighbor. Our kid, it's great weather in southern Utah right now. And so my kids we've been forcing them outside against their will, to be outside. Right. And a lot of neighbors walking around. Anyway, that was part of the conversation. Say, well, how can he plead not guilty? And we know from, enough, we've done these in the past. And even on small cases, you plead not guilty to begin the case. That's a typical starting point.
Yeah. I watched his initial appearance on video, like many, probably, I don't know.
Yeah.
How many people watched, but I'm sure a lot of people watched. And then, of course, my wife was like, what's he wearing? And instantly I recognized it as a suicide smock. And so that's pretty standard too. I mean, he's probably on suicide watch. He's probably in a suicide cell.
So is that what it was? I only saw a clip on my phone, and so I thought it was a flak jacket, but so what is that? Maybe explain that a little better.
Well, obviously with the gravity of the charges, right? So not only does he have the gravity of charges, but I think he made a comment to his dad. The hard part too is you just don't know what to believe.
Yeah, there's
so many reports out there. There's so many not only are the national media reporting things, but I feel like there's a ton of other low level media outlets that are trying to get it on it. And
we love the TikTok kind of investigation.
Oh, that too. We talked about that before in another show.
But sometimes they do get it wrong, and so it is because it's so close to it just happened, where I feel like we do have some information that's maybe getting skewed or...
Yeah, you don't know what's accurate or not. You don't know what to believe. So apparently there was a report that said that Tyler Robinson had said to his dad, I'd rather die than go to jail. Or to be turned in or turn myself in.
Yeah.
So I think with those comments, and maybe he's made comments, obviously I'm sure he's making comments in jail or in other things to other people or the prosecutors, or that would lead to, we need to put this guy on suicide watch and have a suicide smock. Because
now, is that smock kind of like a restraint? Is it so that he can't harm himself? What is it like?
Well, technically, and you mentioned this before we started our show, we actually had a case,
this is before I was even working with
probably
this. This is more than 10 years ago.
12 years ago or so, with a jail suicide. And so when you have inmates that pose a threat of suicide or make comments regarding suicidal ideation, then yes, they'll put them on suicide watch, and they'll have them in a suicide smock. So the idea behind that is that the suicide smock is you're not able to take it off, create a noose, or use the clothing for an apparatus to.
But it's not like what
suicide.
You would see in like a mental asylum where they're restrained completely. It's more meant that they can't take it off and use it as a ligature or whatever.
Correct.
Okay.
And they technically put them in a cell, right? That obviously is supposed to be suicide proof. Now, in this case that we had with this individual, this family I represented, the suicide smock was frayed. So completely frayed. So this particular individual that we represented was able to then rip the lining off the suicide smock. And in this particular jail cell that they had their suicide prevention cell, they had a capped off shower pipe head. So then he was able to create a ligature from the frayed smock and then
the pipe
and hung himself from the attached pipe. And they didn't watch him for like an hour and 45 minutes. So he's able
on suicide watch.
Nobody watched him. So we prevailed on that case at the state and federal level, but then it was appealed to the.
Now, who was this against? Was this a county?
This was a county
sheriff's office. Okay.
So that case got appealed to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, and we argued that in front of the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals.
Was it kind of big? Not a lot of. I've never.
I mean, it's the court right below.
It doesn't happen often. Yeah.
It's the court right below the Supreme Court, of the United States, and the court reversed it on appeal, and basically they found that for governmental entities like a county sheriff's department or a jail, the reckless disregard had to be just shy of like intentional.
Okay. Almost like, hey, he's going to commit suicide, so let's show him in this room and not pay attention for a couple hours.
Right.
And it almost had to be written or something.
Right. And so the appeal decision was almost like, well, did they help him?
Yeah.
Did they tie it?
Okay, now I want to...
That's what it felt like.
I want to sidebar on this because, you see in movies people appearing before the Supreme Court and it, panel of judges, it's either... The Supreme Court's obviously all of them. There's en banc, and then there's sometimes just the 3-panel. What was the setup like when you were appearing before the 10th Circuit? Because this is obviously pre-Zoom, so you're in person. So this is in Denver?
In person, in Denver. And if I recall, there were 6 or 7 judges.
Yeah.
And it was like a
And just 2 tables, one for them, one for you?
They were around like a half-moon-shaped big table.
Okay.
And so they were just like...
But in
Let
a courtroom,
me make my arguments.
It looks like
a courtroom,
nice
big courtroom.
Big courtroom in Denver. Okay.
With lots of lawyers, lots of benches. I felt like I was in a cathedral.
Okay.
That's what it felt like.
It's a big...
Yeah, big courtroom with lots of benches and then a half-moon shaped bench with, and I can't remember the number of justices, but like 6 to 8.
And so it's not just the 3.
No.
That you would, so this is a good...
And then you have a certain amount of time to make your arguments, and then they can ask you questions.
You make what I know the Supreme Court, I think, typically does it in 20-minute blocks. Was it something like that?
Like a 20-minute block.
Both sides, we're going to give each side 20 minutes, and then maybe a rebuttal.
That's right.
Now, was it like a rebuttal to their argument, or did they sit there and kind of pepper you with some questions?
They peppered with questions.
So this, I almost like how you do a moot court in law school or something, but obviously this is with high stakes and a real case.
It's a little intimidating. They come at you pretty good, too.
Because I feel like in our local district court level, we know most of these judges. We kind of... We've
You're
been
comfortable with it, for sure.
And I sometimes, maybe when I've appeared in Provo or a different, in front of a different court that I don't appear in as regularly, you're kind of trying to get a feel for how this judge is. But here...
With the 10th Circuit, it was pretty... Yeah. And they came at me pretty good.
Did they? Well, obviously, they've
already. I think they'd already decided.
Now, in this case, again, was it just you? Did you take any other lawyers at the time
just
that were
me.
from the? Just you.
Just me. So it was. Yeah, it was intense. And
sorry, I didn't mean to derail that, but
no. And I don't agree with their ruling, but it's now.
But this was a case, obviously, that's a little relevant right now because you see
to see him, Tyler Robinson, wearing the suicide smock, it instantly triggered, obviously, that case.
Well, I had my boys this weekend. My wife was up on a softball tournament, so I just had the boys, and we'd gone to Lynn's, and I didn't realize, I think I knew that he obviously lived in Washington, or at least his parents did, and so as we're driving back from Lynn's, you could see the circus. I mean, there was a circus at his house. And
it's actually really sad. I mean, it's sad because, but yeah, I mean, when news broke of the assassination, one, is horrible to even see some of the footage. Horrible, disgusting. There's obviously no place for violence like that anywhere, let alone your ideology, race, religion, whatever.
Yeah, there's
just no place for it at all.
Yeah,
and then when you find out that it's from someone from your community, and in fact, I was getting text from friends and family around the state and around the country. He's from there. He's from where you are. Like, do you know him?
Yeah, Tyler T. Todd from Washington. This kid's name's Tyler
from Washington. And I'm like, oh shoot.
I mean, even I know, not that I want to joke about it, but I even said, well, I guess you're going to have to go by your middle name now.
Yeah, I have to start going by Thomas. But yeah, and that's the hard part too, is you don't want to joke about it because it's such a big deal. But no, texts were coming in, right? And then, yeah, I drive
right past his house.
by his parents' home.
Well, in fact, I mean, it's the route me and you probably drive every time we go to Smith's or Lynn's.
Every day.
I mean, every time you go to the grocery store or anywhere, you drive right past that house, and then it does feel even not only
closer to home.
Not
right?
only did Provo and Orem feel close to home because it's here in Utah, but then knowing that he's from our community was.
And we do know people that know him.
I mean, one of our staffers went to high school with him.
Right. And in fact, we were talking with some family yesterday, and there's photos, with him, hanging out with him. So that's what. And then, of course, I think someone made a comment like, "You were hanging out with a murderer," like that's And so it's an interesting discussion and topic, not only for what it means as a country, but when it's so maybe close to home, like you just said, and you see it and you drive by it and you see all the police cars and you see all the media and the towers and the cameras. And my son's girlfriend is a student at Utah Valley University. And then he was up there this last weekend and they went and, laid flowers at the memorial. And then, of course, now I'm hearing from her that a number of her friends are dropping out of Utah Valley University. And apparently they extended
we've had
dropout time.
We've had inquiries to our office about.
And we've had inquiries into our office about, hey, I was there.
I'm not doing well.
And I'm not doing well. Do I have any legal recourse?
Yeah. And we've talked about this too. This is where it gets really interesting on the legal recourse because, in Utah, we're dealing with governmental immunity. I mean, that's putting our lawyer hat on and taking away kind of the shock and the community of it all. Governmental immunity in Utah, we think is a joke, especially on a case like this, where you potentially have, I don't know, what was it, attended by 3,000 people.
Yeah, well, I don't know the exact numbers, but
number is, thousands of people.
Yeah,
and knowing that the cap on damages is about $3.3 million in Utah,
right,
on a governmental immunity, and that's the max cap. That's not per individual.
That's for the incident.
The entire incident. Now we've seen. And this is where it gets really frustrating as an attorney. We see settlements that communities pay out higher than those amounts from time to time, especially when there's national focus on cases.
Right.
So it's not, those caps are like, well, if we want to enforce it, we will, but sometimes we won't.
Right.
I think there was a case in Moab that was like an $8 million settlement. And the first thing I said is, wait.
Right.
We're getting held to this governmental immunity standard on a case that doesn't go national on national news. How do these cases? So in this case, at least on first glance, looking at just the law, and again, I don't know what Utah Valley will do or if they'll do additional things for settlement, because this is going to be an interesting.
It's going to be interesting, yeah.
But on its face, at least of the stuff we know that the governmental immunity cap is $3.3 million.
Right. It's just interesting because we were just talking about this actually in a podcast before it even happened, because we were discussing the Charlotte train attack.
Yeah.
About what type of regulations and rules need to be in place to avoid any sort of like knives coming onto public transportation, guns. So then obviously with
this happened the day after
we recorded that podcast, what's the answer?
Yeah.
And I think in our other podcast we were saying they already have the turnstiles that you have to go through to put your ticket and then go through. Why can't they have, what's it called?
A metal detector.
Metal detectors.
Yeah.
Why can't they have metal detectors on those turnstiles so when you go through, the metal detector will detect if you have something like that?
Well, and that's one of the things, like, I know a lot of elementary schools have kind of switched to, like, for out of kidnapping fears, have started making, like, playgrounds have chain link fences around them now. The school is no longer kind of an open format. And I think that's also to prevent little kids from getting out to like the street or something.
Right.
But is it to the point where you start kind of having like closed access ways on campus? Because this is in kind of a quad style.
Well, it's similar to like this building, for example, that we're in today.
Yeah.
You have to have a key card to get into the main like area that you have access to all the back offices.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You have to have a key card.
That's our office in St. George.
Same thing. You have to have a key card to get into hotels.
Yeah.
So, yeah, why don't you have to have key cards to get into certain private? I mean, if you're a student at the Utah Valley University, for example, it shouldn't be open to the public.
But then at the same time, you're looking at like what, 8 square mile. I don't know how big Utah Valley campus is. It was a pretty big area. Can you secure an area that big?
Well, I'm not saying you have to.
We obviously can with stadiums.
Well, with stadiums, public transportation, or the buildings themselves, right? Yeah. Key cards to access the buildings, which I think most probably do. Yeah. Now, this obviously the turning point event where the assassination took place was it a budget constraint issue in regards to security?
Yeah. Was it? They obviously knew there was going to be threats, and it was going to be a controversial.
Well, he's had threats before. There's talked. I mean, they were kind of aware of threats. They've talked about. I mean,
but so, they even the kind of political back and forth in their own campus. I think there'd been petitions to not have him come and having. I mean, they knew this was going to be quite the controversial event. I mean, they're kind of designed that way,
right?
I'll say this, and this is where it gets interesting. So, me and you, going back, both of us did internships in Congress,
right?
And I used to go through the southwest entrance to the Capitol building because if you recall, the red line on the subway goes if you want to get over to the House side, you had to go all the way around. So I would get off on the Senate side, walk past the Senate building, and then go in I guess it's the south side of the Capitol building and go in. And I remember quite a few mornings, I had a key card. I did have a key card.
Right.
But the metal detector was broken. They just waved me. I had a backpack on with a laptop in them. I could have had a bomb, a gun.
Anything.
And they're just like waving on the intern, like, go through I could have accessed anywhere but maybe the speaker's office and the House floor. But everywhere else in that building, I just remember thinking.
You basically had access to.
I basically had access to. And this isn't that long. I mean, it's going back to 2011, but we're not that long ago.
Right.
That I just remember thinking, so even if you do those security measures, you then also still have to you have to have almost like TSA level.
Well, you have to implement them.
Yeah, you've got to actually do it.
You still have to implement them.
And I just remember.
I think that's the issue.
Yeah.
You remember what? Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was just going to say, I just remember thinking how did they just let me through? And again, I did have a key card, so I guess that's maybe a step that they were comfortable with. And maybe
but you could have got a key card from anywhere.
But I could have stolen someone's key card, walked right in.
Someone
they weren't checking the ID and look. It wasn't even that type of ID. It just had a pass on it.
I rode the yellow line to the Rayburn House office building, and I would get off there. So I didn't have to walk very far, but I entered into the House office building through the Rayburn building. So, but yeah, same thing. I mean, so to me, it's a budget issue.
Yeah.
It's an implementation issue. Why not hire more people?
Yeah.
So at stadiums, hire more people. At Congress,
yeah,
hire more people. At public transportation, access points, hire more people. You think it'd be a good thing to hire more people? It's more jobs.
Yeah, more jobs created. That's a little more on the tax system, but I'm just telling you right now with what...
At the expense of what?
With how much money they're charging for tuition and everything else, they can afford to do more security.
Goodness gracious.
I mean, campus officers protecting
now
3,000 people.
Yeah, whether you support, for example, Charlie Kirk's ideology of college is a scam.
Yeah.
Right? I think that was a big part of his platform, or a number of things he would talk about. They're making lots of money. Universities are making lots of money. In fact, the University of Utah, I think, just changed or are changing the process of changing the way that they have their schedule, that you can't take more than 30% of your credit hours between the hours of 9 and 2. Have you heard about that?
I haven't heard about it. Or maybe me and you discuss it, but I haven't.
Briefly, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's fully implemented, I think, by the start of 2026.
And what's the reasoning behind it?
Money. I mean, in my opinion,
yeah,
I don't know. I haven't looked at it enough to dig into why they're doing that, but it seems like
I said, I just remember there's a lot of money. Again, college sports brings in a lot of money. College athletics brings in a lot of money. There's a lot of federal tax money. There's a lot of state money at state schools. I think when I hear that there was only 6 campus police officers protecting what even beforehand they knew was a highly controversial event, it does feel inadequate.
It feels inadequate.
I mean, you go to a baseball game and there's 20 people at the front entrance, and it's not a controversial event. I mean,
right?
Sports, you might get some fans fights, but you don't. I think when I hear that there was only 6 officers, that does, at least on its face, feels a little budget unfriendly.
It feels like it's budget conscientious. That's what it feels like. So when you're talking about, and we could talk about this forever, I feel like political assassinations, when you're talking about, because it does feel, and again, regardless of where you stand in ideology, for or against a lot of his beliefs, Charlie Kirk's beliefs, or any beliefs for that matter, it does feel to some degree as heavy as any sort of political assassination we've had in the past.
Yeah.
Because I was aware of the guy. I didn't know. I mean, we had talked about him, but I wasn't really watching any of his videos. I wasn't a follower. I wasn't, I just,
I think it even had come up that I even first got introduced to him just a few months ago when he'd done a podcast with Governor Newsom.
Right.
California.
Yeah, that may have been
was maybe the first he came on my radar even.
I mean, when my son said, "Hey, Dad, Charlie Kirk just got shot," my immediate reaction was, "Who?"
Yeah, which one's Charlie Kirk or something kind of thing?
Exactly. So, but obviously since I've been like, watching videos, and it's all over social media. I mean, you can't pull up TikTok or Instagram and not see something about it. So regardless of his platform or ideology or belief system, and there's a number of people that come out obviously for and against it, I think we can all agree that the way that he died should have never, ever, ever, ever happened.
Yeah.
And the way some of our former political leaders and or influencers, which is really weird to think that we've had previous political influencers, but at the time they weren't like influencers.
Yeah.
They weren't.
You almost don't know what to call them back then, but now we know.
Now we know. They were political influencers. Yeah. Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, JFK, Ford, who else? Big names.
Yeah.
Reagan. We obviously had the Trump, attempted assassination recently.
We had is it Gabby Giffords that was the Arizona, 5 people were shot and killed in 2011.
So, and all in the name of political violence, essentially, right?
I disagree with what your
opinions.
Political views are.
Right. And I think in this country, and obviously all the different violence, it feels like we're at an all-time high for violence. And maybe that's social media, maybe it's gaming, maybe there's a lack of empathy that you don't get with technology and AI and social media. Because that's the only, what other explanation is there that you just have complete lack of empathy other than the fact that either one, you're just a psychopath? Because there's science behind like serial killers. They lack empathy, right?
Well, there was something I saw that was and again, I never know what to, we know how a study can be skewed, but there was something that was like 30% of college age students believe that there are some things that using violence to stop something is justifiable. And I can't remember the exact number, and so don't quote me on the number, but I feel like that number should be 0. I feel like there's nothing that someone can say, kind of the sticks and stones can break my bones sort of type of arguments that should cause me to be violent towards another person. I can disagree with them, and there's hate crimes and different things. You can't run into a crowded room or a crowded theater and yell fire, right? We have laws on the books for those there are things you can't say that can cause issues, but I just feel like, especially with politics, but other things, we shouldn't be okay with any form of violence. I
agree with you. It begs an interesting perspective, because obviously war, right, is violence.
Oh yeah.
World War I was the greatest loss of life in any world war ever, and then World War II, and then the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and then the bombing of Hiroshima.
Yeah.
Like that's, depending on how you see that and look at that, and I've read a lot of books about, the bombing of Hiroshima and what that did to that entire
whole
area. And then you question okay, is that okay? Well, is war and is violence in war okay? Because
and it kind of comes back to that. Do you remember the conversation you have with your kid? I've had this conversation with my son. Is you don't hit people, but if someone hits you, you should defend yourself. You defend yourself.
So it's violence, but then it's defending yourself.
But I feel like the same argument I have with my kids, which is, I don't care what they said to you, or teased you or whatever. You don't hit someone.
Right.
Versus, again, if you got to defend yourself physically, then defend yourself.
But if they hit you first.
Then it changes the equation. I think that's maybe more how I've thought of war versus...
Sure.
And again, I feel like that was one of the great messages that came out of kind of the Martin Luther King movement. And a lot of that was, we're not going to be violent. In fact, we're going to be passive. We're going to sit here. We're going to do sit-ins, and we're going to do marches, and we're going to do protests. And I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think the less violent it is, it made all of the kind of counter to that was so violent. I think I thought it was a lot more powerful, and the message spread a lot further when they were nonviolent.
Right.
And we saw kind of some of that with some of the, a lot of conservatives and Democrats, even in the, kind of during COVID, you had a lot of these protests when they kind of broke down into maybe civil unrest, and then you had buildings being attacked or cars being burned. I think they lost a lot of the steam of that movement versus if it had just been big marches and loud voices. I think that's okay.
Right. I agree with you. And I have heard one thing that Charlie, I've heard lots of things that he said, but there's one thing he said I do like, and I'm not going to go into like what I didn't like, like, and what, what he stood for.
I'm sure there's other things.
There's other things.
I
don't know if I, can subscribe to that. But one thing I thought he made an interesting point with one of the, the students that came up on the mic, right?
Yeah.
I think he was trying to say like, look, whether you subscribe to like using the Bible as your moral compass or your rule book, if you will, because society have to live by rules, or there's chaos, and I believe that.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether you use the Bible as your rule book, you've got to have a rule book. And where do we come up with that? What rule book do we use? And I think I'm paraphrasing to some degree, but that's essentially what he was saying. So, and of course, like in that discussion between Charlie Kirk and the student, he was just inviting him to, hey, look at maybe using the Bible as your rule book. And whether that's the actual like right way of doing it, that's what our country was founded on. Our rule book was founded on, Christian principles, right or wrong. That's just the reality. So I do believe that we have to have a rule book.
Yeah.
And where do we, what's our rule book look like? Do we pull and extrapolate Christian principles to incorporate into our rule book? Muslim principles, Hinduism principles, Judaism, whatever it may be? We need to have a rule book, and we need to all agree upon it. I think one thing that we can all agree upon is that rule book excludes violence unless you're defending yourself or your rights or your freedoms or whatnot, right?
And even in the criminal context, right? Self-defense is a great defense, but all the rest of them land you in jail. You
right.
Attack someone physically and, assault, battery, and all of these things,
and rightfully so.
And rightfully so. I think we should all agree that there's no place again for violence that's not provoked or in self-defense.
Yeah, and I'll just one last thing. We'll end on this. I mean, because there is a civil, not only is there a criminal component to this. Yeah. Tyler Robinson's being charged with, I think, 7.
First it was 3.
7. He has 7 charges.
7 charges already.
And they're seeking the death penalty and all those things. So you have the criminal side of it. And a lot of times people don't understand that there's a criminal side and there's a civil side.
Yeah.
So in the criminal side, it's the state of Utah and potentially the federal government against Tyler Robinson.
Yeah.
Okay. So the state of Utah has filed charges, and there's a prosecutor.
Yeah.
And then Tyler Robinson appears to be being appointed a public defender.
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw the affidavit of indigency was filed.
So that was part of that process yesterday, was getting that process going so that he could be appointed a public defender. But on the civil side, then that's what we're looking at from our perspective as injury lawyers. Is there a civil side against Utah Valley University, against any other maybe private entities that could have been hired for security or for ticketing, which is possible?
Well, and even Charlie Kirk's surviving family will have likely cause of action against that security, against the university.
Well, there might be claims, and no one's really talking about this, and it's not like I want to be like kick them while they're down. Yeah. But there could be claims against Turning Point.
But those, at least with our legal hat on, those are always things. Those are things we look at.
Turning Point could also be potentially liable for the lack of security. I mean, they, in conjunction with Utah Valley University, put on the event.
Yeah.
And they put on an event that left thousands of people traumatized due to, obviously, the actions by Tyler Robinson, but also potentially due to inaction or omissions by either Turning Point USA and or Utah Valley University.
Yeah, my assumption is that Turning Point USA is going to have some civil liability. That's
Potentially.
That's going to be a component.
And then it goes down to, why?
Yeah.
Was it budget? Just not thinking about it? They thought about it, but they didn't want to spend the money on it. So that's...
And then it might just be, as it's analyzed, that it was adequate based on he'd done, I don't know how many events, hundreds of events similar and had the same security. And there might be a component to that.
For sure. So all those things are super relevant to that discussion. We're here in Utah, so it's certainly relevant to, what we're looking at and seeing and hearing from potential clients around the state. They want to know, do they have a case? And the answer to that is you may.
Yeah.
You absolutely may. And depending on how it's impacted you or affected you, absolutely may. And then whether the caps will apply. So there's a number of things that's going to continue to come out. We're watching it. We're podcasting about it. If there's questions or you guys have questions, you can reach out to us. You can find us online at wewinInjuryLaw.com. You can subscribe to this podcast. You can find us on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. There's a number of ways you can reach out to us. So please reach out to us. It's just interesting. It's sad. It's sad that it's happened in the past. It's sad that it just happened here in Utah. It's sad to think that it may happen again. Hopefully it never does, but more than likely it probably will. It's just sad that we have to be concerned about those things when you go out, and it's got to stop. It's got to stop.
I think we can all agree on that.
We can all agree. It's got to stop. So thanks to you guys for tuning in. We'll be talking more about this probably in future podcasts. So if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And until next time, leave early, slow down, be safe, be considerate to all those around you and your communities, wherever you are. And I'll leave it with that.